In this video, we're going to look at a physical concept that we've seen already, and more generally, we're going to look at physics motion fundamentals in this next video series. And so really what we want to talk about is distance and displacement, which we've seen already, speed and velocity, and then also acceleration. And so here are the different learning steps that we're going to go through to get there, and that's fine. One resource that I want to point out to you is this. So if you go to this website, http://cnx.org, and then go to college physics. If you look at sections 2.1 to 2.5, very useful information there, which is going to mirror kind of the highlights of what we talk about in these videos. And then there's also a direct link here that you can access using the slides that are linked in the schedule. So anyway, let's get on to talking about distance and displacement. So we've already talked about distance and displacement. The idea is that distance, this is just, we know this is a scalar quantity. And this is measuring just how far you traveled, and so we're going to typically measure this in something like feet. And versus displacement, this is a vector, and when we talk about this, this is comparing where you started, or where you ended, rather. We should really start with then. So you're comparing ending to beginning. Okay, both in terms of kind of position in the plane, in space, whatever, and then also direction, where we talked about angles. And so we talked about vectors last time as well, and angles. So we're building off of that. Some notes with all this are that when we look at each of these units, or both these quantities, they're really measurements of position, just describing where a path is in its motion. So in one we care about only the beginning and the ending and the direction. The other one we actually compare about every bit of space that we've moved through in our entire journey. And then just another thing is that the units for both of these are feet or meters, whatever prefix you want to add to those if you're in the metric. So just be aware of that. Okay, and now we're just going to do an example. So here I give you a path that an object took, and I just want you to determine the distance and displacement. Okay, so distance, I think, will be a little bit more straightforward, and displacement is going to be a little bit more interesting. So I want you to pause the video and see if you can figure these out. Okay, well, distance really is just adding everything up. So this is going to be, what, 11 units, so 5 plus 2 plus 3 plus 1. And then, again, I didn't say feet or meters or whatever, so it's just going to be 11 units. Displacement, that's a little bit more interesting, because what we need to imagine is that if we started here, and we ended here, okay, our displacement vector would point from start to end, okay, and then I need to think, okay, well, here's the vector that I'm looking at, so here's the vector, and then to describe this vector, right, I need direction and magnitude, so, or I could also use that inner product, or that angle bracket notation. So we'll kind of go through all of these again. So in terms of angle bracket notation, well, I've gone 5 units, and then from here to here there's 3 more units, right? So in terms of the horizontal component, I've gone 8, and then for the vertical, well, I think you might guess that it's going to be 1, because we went up 2, and then we came down 1, so this is just going to be 1. Okay, so that's fine, but I'd also like that this vector represented in terms of the magnitude, so the magnitude and direction. So magnitude is just going to be the square root of the horizontal component squared, so 8 squared plus 1 squared, so this is square root of 65, which doesn't break down, and then I should give an angle of, or that we progressed at, and so that would be the angle from kind of this initial position, or the due east vector, if you will, up there, and I don't know, what do we think, maybe about 15 degrees, or maybe 20 degrees? or so. And so just be aware of that as you go forward. But this is just a little bit of a review of distance and displacement. We'll move on and use these concepts in the later exercises we'll see in the other videos.